You wait for live. There we go. We're live and we're coming out from. Hello, viewers, and welcome to Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
Your co-host, Buddy. And that's
Do
yours,
you
right?
want to do it?
I don't know why I was about to say it. I never say it. And today we're going to talk about Young Justice. But why don't you tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
Well, it's pretty simple. On this podcast, we like to talk about games or other things in the nerd canon. And today we're gonna do Young Justice Season 1, which we
10
did at
years later.
yeah. We did at Buddy's suggestion. This is my first time saying it. This is what, your second time saying it?
This is my fifth time seeing it.
Okay, I mean
Because
that makes sense.
I watched it when it was first coming out, and it was nuts then. Like, it was insane. Because, like, obviously there's all these cliffhangers. There was a ton of theorizing in, like, the kind of, in the way that you might think of, like, Game of Thrones theorizing. Everybody had all these theories about, spoiler stuff, obviously. Um,
When
then
did
Young
this
Justice
first come
Season
out?
2, 2010.
Okay.
Then Young Justice Season 2 started airing, and it just added more fuel to that fire, right? And then there was like an 8-year gap before Young Justice Season 3 got picked up. It first got picked up by Netflix, actually, because Young Justice got put on Netflix and had like really good numbers, and so Netflix kind of was doing the Arrested Development thing. But then the DC Universe app got created, and they needed shows, so they swapped it out from under Netflix, and then it was on that app, which has now been folded into HBO Max, obviously. So Young Justice has had a very storied history that I I'm so glad this show exists.
So there's what is there, 4 seasons now, and is it ended, or is it like?
It is 3 seasons. Season 4 is in develop. It's like in
Oh, okay.
production to
Okay.
some extent. I don't know what kind of production, but or like what the updates are. Because famously, like it's a lot of work to make these kinds of animated shows, and especially for 24 episodes. Um, all right, 3 months ago, Young Justice season 4, which is called Phantoms. Um, the status update is that 13 episodes are finished, 6 episodes are being animated, 7 are in post production. Um, so
Okay, so
that's
soon.
that's like the current status of all things Young Justice.
All right, so I guess before we get to spoiler territory, let's give our basic impressions. I mean, you first, since it's your
I
topic
love
first.
this show. I think that this is the best. Man, do I want to say that? The thing I'm tempted to say is that this is the best superhero show, maybe the best superhero like media, to be honest with you. Um, man, it's so good. That like that I can think of. It's helped by a guy named Greg Weisman, who's famous for he created the Gargoyles show. Like, did you ever watch that show or
No,
whatever?
but I'm
He
aware that it
also
has
did
fans.
Spectacular Spider-Man. He did Star Wars Rebels, I want to say. He actually did some WoW stuff too. He used to write this children's line of WoW books called Traveler. But he's very famous, he's a very famous television writer for kind of like a variety of different things. And I just think that he has this perfect sensibility for like the DC universe. And that this version of it is maybe kind of like the definitive version in my head, in a way, of what like the platonic ideal of the DC universe feels like, which is very unique. Like the movies have never captured this. As much as I love them, right now, on this podcast I go to bat for them. Other TV shows have gotten close. I think Justice League Unlimited is really good, but I really feel like Young Justice is the best version of the DC universe that I feel like I would want to show someone, if that makes sense.
That does, and I will agree that it does some things very well, and I enjoyed watching this a lot. I don't think it's. I can't speak to like kind of like the DC universe as a whole, because I have a very limited view into that. Um, although I do recognize that it does the DC universe stuff very well. I'm sure we'll get into that on the other side of the spoiler warning section. Um, but in terms of like as a show, I think it's good, but I think it's got some real flaws. Like, basically anything that is the teen drama, I think is like middling to
Okay, that's
bad.
interesting.
Yeah. I've also been mildly spoiled on some upcoming things. So what is it? The show where it's a YouTube channel that does like history and tropes. Why can't I remember the name of it? It's got like
Oh,
the history guy is blue and
yeah,
the
yeah,
tropes
yeah.
girl is red.
Overly sarcastic
Yeah,
productions or
overly
whatever,
sarcastic
OSP.
productions. Yeah, yeah. They did a
In a
thing.
trope talk, she must have talked about it, right?
Yeah, yeah. She talked about the time skips because there's a time and there's a time skip in the show and I don't
Yeah,
like
there's a time skip between season. I was gonna ask at the end of this, what are your predictions for season 2? Because like everyone's predictions for season 2 were so wrong because of the time skip. That
the time skip
for the
happens
folks at
after
home.
season 1. I actually didn't know that. I thought the time
Oh,
skip
oh, really?
yeah,
Wait, what? Oh, I guess I don't know what you're spoiled on then.
so
It's not a huge spoiler. Obviously, the next season of the show starts,
yeah.
in a new
So
context,
I
right?
had assumed that the time skip happened between season 2 and season 3 because of the real
Okay.
world time skip. But basically she talked about like some relationships that I think get broken up that I think happen like I think between characters I don't know exist yet, like or that aren't in the show yet or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Um uh
This is now very interesting and spicy. I mean,
yeah, I
obviously,
mean
this is kind of contained to season 1, but season 2 and season 3 are forthcoming. We'll watch and report back, I guess, for everyone. I'm very interested because I haven't watched that episode of Overly Sarcastic Production, so I actually don't know how much of it gets spoiled.
yeah, I mean
Um,
so and she it's not very spoilery, right? Like it's just kind
mhm.
of like these are things that happen and the thing that she comments I think the comment that she said was something like um they like keep adding new characters to the cast instead of like developing the existing ones, which I don't have a huge view for now, but you can see like parts of it. um but I also think that in some ways the like the way that they handle the DC universe characters is good. So let's hit the spoiler thing now. Like, this is
Okay,
it's a
yeah, obviously
recommendation from
spoilers
me
is huge.
with some
I do
reservations.
wanna stress, if you haven't watched this show, I highly recommend watching it. It's all on HBO Max right now. It's a very bingeable show, and I would
Yes.
recommend binging it because there's just like a lot of storytelling that happens kind of serially episode to episode, and there's a lot of cool shit that you can, kind of like notice. But I would very much want to protect somebody from spoilers. Um, so if you haven't watched Young Justice yet, pause it and go watch all like, you know, 6 hours of it right now.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's oh yeah, I guess what is it, 24 by 22? So that's like three episodes an hour.
eight, 8.5, 9 hours, 9 hours total, right?
Wait, 3 episodes an hour over 24. Yeah, I guess that's 8 hours. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Um. So yeah, spoilers for Young Justice season 1 forthcoming.
Okay,
Go
I'm
watch it.
definitely very interested in the teen drama piece of this because I kind of agree that I think it's not great. But I think part of that is so what I have sort of two pieces of it. One, I'm not a teenager anymore. When I remember first watching this, I was in college. I was obviously 20, right?
Much closer to being a
Um,
teenager.
yeah, right. And so I was much more in that sort of a headspace, I guess, if that makes sense. And I remember being very like in it, And but like now I feel like some of that stuff definitely sort of has aged kind of poorly. But I sort of don't know, am I aging out of teen drama as a genre, or is it not great in the show? I have a feeling that the answer is a little bit more it's not great in the show, right? Like, I've talked about I talked about the teen drama in Invincible. We talked about it in like Spider-Man Homecoming or whatever, right? And so I do feel like I can sort of like recognize it, but there is sort of a break. Maybe it's just like, culturally we're in a different sort of spot. Like did not feel Wally was as gross or like cringy that I felt now because I sort of think that brand of character has not aged poorly
Oh,
or
see,
has not aged very well. Do you know
that
what I mean?
I do. That's interesting because like Wally was not like Wally. I was like it was more kind of on the trope. Like so, there's a lot of things that happen in this show, obviously, but
Yeah.
like I think it like it kind of like uses a lot of tropes as shorthand to get like I think a lot of this is like it's 22-minute episodes, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of them have self-contained plots. You need to get through it. Um, and like Wally's kind of like womanizing, right, comes across as kind of like somebody trying to be cocky when they're clearly not, right? Like that like rang a little bit more true to me than like some of the other stuff that happened. Like,
Yeah,
and
and I think it ends in a good spot for, you know what I mean? Like, no one ever rewards him for being kind of gross and hitting on all these women, right?
right, yeah,
You know, um, which I think is good, and I think is the, you know, like, it at least ends in an okay spot. But it just, I was grated hearing him just like calling like Black Canary, you know, like babe or whatever, and I was just like, ah, Wally, stop, like,
yeah. No, but I think that goes to like the point, or part of the point, right? Like he's supposed to be gross. Like he's supposed to be maybe not gross. Like maybe that's something
but
that's
like immature,
right.
right? You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
Whereas I felt that like say Superboy and Miss Martian's romance came across as cringe at some points. Not all the time, but like there were moments.
Okay, where did it? I think I like Superboy and Miss March's romance quite a lot, but I like it sort of in the. I think the best drama in the show comes in sort of these like intra-team squabbles, right? Like there's a whole episode about, you know, Aqualad hears from Sportsmaster. Sportsmaster. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
Well, Aqualad hears from Sportsmaster that there's a mole in the team, and he tells Batman about it, or he speculates on this with Batman, and Superboy hears him and reveals to the whole team that Aquaman knew there was a traitor this whole time, and we all thought it was Red Tornado for whatever reason, right? Um, the whole episode is about how everyone's really pissed at Aqualad about this, and part of that is built into Superboy and Miss Martian's relationship, right? Superboy is overly protective of her, and that's like the source of his sort of like anger and frustration. Whereas Robin and Kid Flash are like, how could you possibly not tell me there's a mole, right? Like, how could you not trust me? We started this thing together, and you're keeping secrets or whatever, right? Like, all of that drama is bundled up together, and it's good, and it's like good drama, and a piece of that drama is teen drama. Um, but I feel like I think I agree with you about some of the standalone aspects of um their relationship, and also just like you know, like there's one episode where it's the one where it's Wally's birthday, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get a kiss from Miss Martin," and like she's been dating Superboy for episodes upon episodes at this point. They just haven't told Wally that or whatever. I just felt like that whole sequence was bad and dumb, you know? So I think I do agree that kind of in isolation, I don't jive with the teen drama, you know, stuff
yeah.
as much as I did, you know, 10 years ago. Or maybe 10 years ago I was just so fixated on all of the plot reveals and the what's happening next that it I just didn't even phase me.
I think some of this too might be the binge aspect, right? Like we've talked about this before, that like
Mm.
watching these episodes in a row doesn't give like the week of like breathing room.
Yeah, this was week to week. Actually, it was week to week with a huge hiatus in between, which I remember being really pissed about because this was airing on Cartoon Network at the time, and it was getting garbage ratings, and we were all watching it online and talking about it online, because it was kind of in that era where just like everybody was pirating everything.
Yeah, but
Not that I would
before
ever
the
do that.
yeah, no, we legally acquired all of the content. You know, I mean, now we did
Yeah,
at least. Yeah,
yeah. So I think the bingeability of it might factor into things.
because like does like that betrayal thing, I feel like stretches across at least two episodes, right? Like the, you know, we're mad at Aqualad, but like
Hmm.
it felt like it was going to last for like, you know, 20 or 30 minutes, and it did, right? Like in, you know, in like back to back time. But it was like very much like, oh, this is going to get resolved quickly, and then it does, and it gets resolved in like the cheesiest kind of like, you know, a leader needs to take charge, right? Type of way. And then he like he's like, we need to do this mission good. And like everybody's like, okay, yes, we will do that. And then the problem is solved, right? Like, and
So one of those problems that, you know, it gets solved by Aqualad just talking, and I think that this is well done in the episode, right? You know, Aqualad is a kid, right? He doesn't have these leadership skills, and so I think you can kind of forgive him for making this mistake. But once he never actually says, I didn't want to take Sportsmaster at his word. He could be lying to me, and if he is telling the truth, I don't want to tip off, I don't want to tip off the mole. It has nothing to do with trust in you guys or whatever. And he does he does say that to the team at the end of the episode, and they vote to keep him as leader and whatever else. But it is one of those things where it's just like, just talk for 5 minutes and you guys will get over this, this stuff.
Yeah, and on top of that, right? Like, I think this is the format, right? Like, it gets resolved quickly and with like very little to do. It's like, Batman tells Aqualad to be assertive, and then he is assertive, and then the assertiveness works, and that's how things work in 22-minute cartoons, and so everyone is happy forever.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely stuff that like the mole thing was huge. Everyone had theories because the weird thing about the show, and this doesn't quite get translated in a bingeable sense, was we know the mole is real because we, the viewer, watch the light talk about having the mole outside of the context of the league or anything else, right? So Sportsmaster is absolutely telling the truth. We also know that mole can't be Red Tornado because you watch the little zap that reprograms Red Tornado or whatever, and so the team thinks it's Red Tornado, and they eventually learn it's not, by the way. But they think it's Red Tornado, and so like following along in that context really changed how I was viewing the show in a way, because like you're paying attention to these details and they simmer week to week, and you're reading people's theories and they're like, oh no, it can't be Red Tornado because they make Vandal Savage refers to it in the private meeting of the light in this episode, and Sportsmaster tells the other guy in this episode, and you watch Red Tornado get zapped in this episode, and so it's just like you're putting all these pieces together, and that's just like a really fun and engaging, like, I don't know, activity, I guess, sort of surrounding the context of the show. Um, I don't really know. I don't have more complicated thoughts about it, but
No,
that's just like that's a piece of it that you can't experience that anymore, right?
yeah, no, I mean, and I think, and the show managed to surprise me. The mole is Speedy or Red Arrow,
Mm,
I guess. And I was thinking, it's like, well, it can't be any of the three people that are being floated as the mole, because that would be too obvious for a show, right? So it's got to be either Robin or Aqualad. And I think I might have gotten spoiled on something that happens later, so I had thoughts about that. And I'll just leave it there.
that's season 2 stuff though.
Yeah, so
If you're referring to what I think you're referring
I
to.
probably am. This was from
Okay.
the episode, so I'll leave it there. Um, just to not spoil it for anybody else, but it did catch me off guard.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing that I think was like just kind of like in the range of criticisms of the show is like there are definitely a couple episodes that are what animes would call filler episodes, right? Like Wally's birthday, right? Like the like it ties into the meta plot, but it's not like it's about Wally, and that's fine. But
Mm,
there was an episode. Maybe I can't. Maybe it was the one with the new, like the the sphere people, the new
the
the
new gods.
yeah, the new gods. Like, there's a couple episodes that feel very fillery. Um
Yeah.
um
I
and
do think that there are some episodes that I think of as sort of like fillery. Another one is the episode where Robin goes like it solves this circus he's
oh
doing
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
with
that's
his
a big one.
his
Yeah.
circus train or whatever. I like all of those episodes though. I especially like Wally's birthday, to be quite honest. I think that so the show always has enough little bits of the meta plot in there, right? Like obviously the ice storms are a cover. You just get a tiny little bit. It's like 30 seconds, right? But you watch Riddler, maybe somebody else, they steal a component for these chips for this thing that they've been doing this whole time, right? It's a piece of Starro from Atlantis, a piece of whatever, right? They're putting all this tech together, and you follow that briefcase forward. Then it like then passes to Sportsmaster and Cheshire and everything like that. Um, and so it like touches on the meta plot, but there are definitely some episodes that are just like, you know what? There is this one's not very complicated. It's like a personal deep dive into this one character, right? Like the Robin episode is one. Basically, everybody gets one, right? There's the Hello Megan for Miss Martian. There's the Artemis and Red Arrow tracking one another with like 80 million tracking beacons episode. There's the Robin solves his murder. There's not really a good Aqualad episode. No, wait, I'm lying. The Atlantis episode is an Aqualad
Yeah.
episode. There's Kid Flash's birthday, and then there's who's left? Oh, and then there's Superboy and Match, which is one of my favorite episodes actually, where Superboy learns that that Lex Luthor is his dad and he does a bunch of drugs.
Yeah, no, I mean like the obvious. I think I messaged you this. Like the obvious drug analog is here. I'm surprised they didn't do like a very special episode. Maybe that's coming, but
I like that they dodged that in a way. I in general. So I think my biggest criticism of Young Justice season 1 is the meta plot is so huge that it feels like like a huge locomotive screeching to a halt because it all comes to a head in essentially one episode, right? And it just feels like they are covering ground lightning fast. Like they develop an entire like we spent the entire season watching the Light, the bad guys putting together this little microchip that takes control of Batman and everybody else, and put together an antidote and vaccine off
off
screen.
screen. Yeah.
Like, you can tell that just like because there's so much stuff, there's so much stuff kind of like happening or whatever, but it all has to conclude in one 22-minute episode. That is just like I think that sucks and isn't great. Um, but
What are you gonna do?
what are you gonna do, right? But yeah, I like these little like one-on-one episodes you get with the individual characters. Hello Megan is huge because I think I was very with you at the time where I kind of thought that like the
So
way
so
that she was behaving was incredibly cringy, but it
yeah, yeah.
all paid off and I died.
To set it for the people at home, while I was watching this, I'm just sending Buddy messages, and like there's some like they all like do a little bit of this, right? But like like Robin does the thing where you take like two words that have like they're like compound words, but they don't have a
Underwhelming.
base.
It's
Yeah,
like I'm whelmed
yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever.
And like Superboy hates monkeys,
He hates
and
monkeys, Mango.
and they do a pretty good darn dirty ape line. I thought that was pretty well done for like an exterior reference. But like I thought, Miss Martians was the worst. Hello, Megan. I was just like, oh my god, I can't believe they're actually doing this, and then it pays off. I'm just like, oh.
It pays off. So I remember I freaked out when it happened, especially because it comes up way in the beginning. It is constantly referenced, right? Where she's like, this isn't a plot of a 70s sitcom or whatever, right? Like, and those things completely wash right on by. You just don't even pay any attention to them. And then the Hello Megan episode shows up and you're just like, oh fuck. Like I like Miss Martian quite a lot. She's interesting because okay, obviously Robin has a lot of baggage, right? Kid Flash also in this kind of context has a lot of baggage, and then I would say Superboy has a lot of baggage in the sense that they are very close to their kind of like comic book archetype, right? Outside of the fact that Robin is not the leader, which is a good change. But Artemis, Miss Martian, and Aqualad were all essentially just invented whole cloth for the show. Miss Martian does exist in the comics, but she just has a much smaller, like she's in a Teen Titans arc for a little bit. I think Artemis also exists, but under way different circumstances. All this stuff with Cheshire, her dad, all that stuff is completely different. And then Aqualad was this version of Aqualad, Calderon, was created at the same time that his version in the comics was also created. So I feel like those characters have a certain kind of like level of care just because they had the most malleability to them, right? They don't really have to like conform to continuity. And Miss Martian is pretty key among those in, like the strength of her. I mean, the strength of her telepathy is one thing, and like the episode where she fries Simon is like fucked. Like, not only does she brain blast her own friends to keep them from seeing her as a white Martian, but she also like lobotomizes Simon, and it's like, whoa, guys, we're really going, like
And that also
and
doesn't pay
that's
off,
my
right?
shit. Yeah. Well, obviously these characters go forward, and so there's more, like, and
Mm.
there's more to them. And I don't want to comment about any of that kind of stuff or whatever, but I just think that like I really like Miss Martian's kind of setup here.
Yeah, I mean, she
As
gets a
just
whole episode where she like causes the problem by being so telepathically strong, right? Like,
Yeah, and I like that there's a lot of setup and payoff across the series, right? There's a lot of stuff that is like this, right? Like her psychic ability is set up in what is essentially another one of these filler episodes, right? Where like it's a failure case scenario. It's what's the Star Trek version of this?
Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah, the Kobayashi Maru. It's like that, right? But she's so powerful that she takes over the psychic simulation, and Martian Manhunter is like she's like the fucking most powerful psychic ever, or whatever. And then that pays off later when she just like absolutely dominates, Simon in that kind of like one-on-one psychic battle or whatever. Same thing with like, I like the dynamic between Robin and Aqualad, because Robin eventually, so Aqualad is leader, which is nice because normally Robin is the leader, and it's kind of cool to see him subservient in that like lieutenant role. And also just think Aqualad is cool. And but then Aqualad is just out for an episode. He's doing whatever, and Robin's in command, and he has a rocky time with it. And I think that those sort of like long running sort of like mini arcs for each of these characters is also complex.
I think it's complex. I think it's good, but I also think that like it seems like that they are like Robin will eventually be the team leader, and it's just a matter of when. Like they're like very clear about that, right? Like up to the point
Yeah.
where like Aqualad's like I should resign. He's like, well, I guess I can't give it to Robin yet, as if like that's the only option ever, which makes sense in terms of the show. But like it is kind of weird to hear and be like, nobody else is qualified except for Robin, who are very obviously going to make the leader at some point, right? Like
Yeah, I also think that it's cool to have Robin be in that supporting role because he becomes like the tech guy where he's
yeah,
like hacking into shit or whatever. And I also just really love the episode where they explain why he is not suited to be the leader, because like he's been doing this for so long and he does it with Batman that he's actually very bad at communicating with other people. And he's like, "Oh, disappear into the jungle," like when Kid Flash like falls in front of Bane or whatever on Santa Prisca.
yeah. No, yeah. So something I do want to talk about though is
Okay.
the kind of like Ferris wheel, or like the revolving door of like every DC, like minor DC character ever type of deal. And, it's like there are so many of them, and like there are moments that I feel very smart for knowing things, right? Like when it's like, and sorry, train going by. But when when they're like Shazam's gonna be your first like volunteer, I'm like, oh, or Captain Marvel, I guess this is technical, whatever. I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, it's because he's a kid and he wants to hang out with the other kids, right? And like, I'm sure every other DC person is like, also doing, or like, and we're doing it for more moments because there were definitely some that I missed that had to get explained to me. And but then the show goes and explains it to you, right? Like the show goes and shows who how Shazam turns into Billy Bats at some point. And I think that's really cool. I'm sure there are people who freak out over the smaller characters, right? Like we mentioned Sports Masters. Like who the fuck is a Sports Master, right? Um,
Sports.
and
I love Sportsmaster though. So the thing I love about Sportsmaster is he's very doofy. Like, this is not very much a relation to the comics. He's a very doofy villain in the comics because he's kind of from the very early like Justice Society days, where his whole gimmick is that he just carries around a tennis racket and tennis balls that are grenades, and he throws it up and he serves it and it blows up or whatever. It's just like the most like cartoonishly like from Batman 66 shit. But they just needed a guy who is this kind of assassin character, right? For the League of Shadows to sort of fit in with Cheshire and everything. Um and he
do you
and
know who
that
Casey Jones is from Teenage Mutant
Casey
Ninja
Jones.
Turtles?
Yeah, from Teenage Mutant Ninja
Because he's
Turtles.
essentially the same character, except he's a good guy. Which is just it was just like a thing that kept going through my head, right? Like he's like I think he uses hockey equipment stereotypically, but like um very similarly, like is sports, like has like a golf bag full of like sports equipment and like hits people with it.
Yeah, this is basically his whole shtick. And so he kind of got brought over. And the funny thing is that there are just a million of these characters over the course of uh DC, like, and they eventually kind of like come in later, right? Like you know, if you're wondering why we don't see Deathstroke, for instance, that's sort of a down the line thing, right? But it's just funny to think that like Ra's al Ghul's top lieutenant is fucking Sportsmaster, and his whole thing is like, and he's honestly like seriously dangerous, right? Like there's this one where he's pulling out these javelins, and he throws one
Miss
at
Martian
Roy,
invisible.
and it like
Oh
smacks in. Oh, and yeah, he sees Miss Martian when she's invisible. It smacks Roy in like the quiver, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, that should have killed him, right? Like he's like a legitimately, kind of terrifying villain, right? But it's because they created this link between Cheshire, Artemis, and Sportsmaster, all of which I loved. I specifically love Cheshire. I think Sportsmaster is a little bit lame, if I'm being honest. But I think Cheshire is is a really cool character in this show, and she does cool and complicated things, right? Like you could tell she's working with her dad, but she's not really happy about it. She saves Artemis's life because even though they're kind of fighting for the wrong team, she doesn't want her sister to die. All that stuff I thought was really great, and is a big reason why I don't know, I enjoy it. Plus, I love all of her shit with Roy. There's another episode which I would sort of call a filler episode, the Relasia episode, where you're just hanging out with Red Arrow as he's like protecting Lex Luthor because you're in that classic situation of like somebody's trying to assassinate Lex Luthor while he's trying to make peace between North and South Korea, Relasia, whatever.
God.
Um,
I mean, like the depiction of like what is very obviously North and South Korea just had me like going like Jesus, like wow, right? It's like
yeah, I mean, my favorite aspect about that is clearly both of the voice actors for the leaders of North and South Malaysia thought they were doing Japanese stuff, because like they just sound like Japanese characters, and it's just like, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much I want to like go deep on that stuff. Bialia is very similar along this line.
I feel like
Bialia,
Bialia is a little bit more like a little bit less like because Bialia isn't real, right? And it's ruled by Queen Bee
mm,
or whatever. It feels a little bit less obnoxious, I guess, right? Like than although I guess the other leader like Bialia doesn't feel as obnoxious to me because it's a supervillain, whereas like the democratically elected leader that she's trying to like overcome feels like you could probably read a little bit more into that if you really wanted to. Um, but just like the North and South Korea thing was just like so obvious and so cartoonish that it felt weird. It felt weird to me, right? It's like this is like
yeah,
a
I mean
real
Bialia is there. I think they didn't want to use Kondak, which is the typical one that gets used as just like an invented Middle Eastern country to sort of do invented Middle Eastern stuff. But Kondak is very tied to Black Adam's mythology. We talked about this, I think, in
the
the
Shazam
Wonder
episode.
Woman episode
Oh,
or the Shazam episode. Like Black Adam is he's sealed away in a thing, and then Captain Marvel accidentally releases him to the world or whatever, and he is the ancient Egyptian. Like he's like an ancient Egyptian pharaoh in what it would be modern day Bialia, and he shows up and he says, "Hey guys, it's me. I'm your leader from long ago." It'd be like if Ramses the second, right, like showed up in the modern day or whatever. So he just becomes the leader of Kondak, and that is its own thing. And Bialia is also related to that, but typically framed in like kind of opposition to Kondak, and as part of his this like it's almost like an Israel-Palestine thing, but they're both Arab nations. There's nothing, like there's no religious conflict or anything about, like Palestine or any of that kind of complication. Just as like it is constantly in conflict, these countries in the Middle East. And yeah, I don't really know why they use Bialia if they're not going to do anything with Kondak, but it's the world we live in. I was a little disappointed. I remember when I first watched. I mean, first of all, I think this episode sucks in general. Is maybe the worst of the season. The Injustice League episode with Poison Ivy, Baron, or Count Vertigo, the Joker. God, like the worst Joker ever. Um, and Black Adam is in there, and I don't even think he has a line. Like he's just there to punch people,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. No, I was not a super huge fan of it either. It feels like it's also like a little too like it's like break the thing, and the thing I sent to you is like, imagine being the Atomic Skull with another character I'd never heard of, and it's like your job is just to stand there and be like literally a nuclear reactor and like shove power into this plant, right? Like,
It was a fake. I mean, it was like a fake out that everybody saw. I remember at the time there was a big question of because when you're first introduced to the light, they are hidden from you, and so there's a question: who's a member? Who is part of the light or whatever? And so it was kind of like the first big fake out of like, oh, is this the light? Obviously not, you know. But at the time we were all sort of speculating about it, right? Um, and it is sort of revealed to be a red herring in universe, right? Like the Injustice League is supposed to sort of throw the team and the Justice League off the trail of the light as they're doing their shit. Um, but you know, it's there.
yeah, I mean, it
Did you
is.
have like a favorite episode of, over the course of the season?
Ooh, what was I think I do. Let me look up the episode titles.
Okay.
Uh, because do you have one?
That's actually a good question that I don't have a great answer to. I mean, I've mentioned a couple episodes that I do like quite a lot, but I don't know that there's any individual ones that I'm just like, yes, this is my shit.
Uh, I remember really liking Alpha Male. I think.
Okay, that's the episode with I think that's the episode where they are that also might be my favorite episode because that's the episode where it's all the drama about the Aqualad leading and keeping the mole a secret, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Because isn't that the episode where they find Wolf?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, yes,
Mm,
that is. Yeah, it's the. I think that might also be the one with the damn dirty ape or darn dirty ape line in it. Um.
yeah.
Uh. But I just remember it being. Oh, you know why? Part of it too is because I think this is also the Captain Marvel episode. Where I
Yep.
feel very very smart for having had that known that. I also think this is a point where like so part of the stuff that I thought was bad was like the teen drama stuff, and like as the season goes on they do less. When I say teen drama stuff, I mean less like intra party stuff and more kind of like I'm just a normal kid living a normal day, but at night I'm a superhero type stuff, and then like by the end of the season that's basically gone, right? Like it's just like occasionally you dip into that world, but it's mostly kind of like um them doing superhero stuff. And I feel like this was kind of around part of that turning point where like
Oh
got
no, I'm
less of it.
lying. I know my favorite episode is different than this. As I'm actually looking through the things, and it's because of one specific moment that just like, oh,
What,
it
what,
gets
what
me
is it?
so hard. Misplaced. It's the episode where it splits
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
kids and the adults. The payoff of Zatara taking the Helm of Fate from Zatanna and putting it on is so heart wrenching. Oh my god. Like it is so good. Especially because like they don't let it go. They don't like let it go. That's not the end of it, right? Because there are moments where like there's a moment I think in the finale where Dr. Fate has been mind controlled and Zatanna
Tries
fixes
to pull
him
it out.
and then she runs over and tries to take the helmet off and it like zaps her or something like that. And it's just like what a great detail to add. It's so easy when the story ends, right? Like that, that kind of tension is relieved and we're kind of past this, right? Zatara has sacrificed himself. He is now just Dr. Fate. We're paying off this Dr. Fate episode from way earlier with Kid Flash, where Kid Flash was like a non-believer or whatever, and Dr. Fate wanted to like hold on to him. It also retroactively makes the fake out much better. I remember being very annoyed at the time when Calder could just put on the Dr. Fate helm and he took it off easy peasy. I was like, what the fuck? You just told us how important it is to not just do that, right? That Dr. Fate wants to take control of somebody. Calder's already, like he's half of a sorcerer already or whatever. So just all of that stuff paying off felt so good. And it's just, it's such a moment. Plus, I also just liked obviously the league and the team don't know the age of Billy, and that's like a cool thing to kind of pay off, right? Where he, in the first episode you see him, you just meet Captain Marvel, and imagine you're a kid, you've never seen this guy before, right? You just see Captain Marvel, and he's just another superhero you've never met before, but here he is, right? And then the end of the episode, he says Shazam, and oh, would you look at that? He's actually a kid. That's like a neat little, a neat little nod, neat little continuity thing. Then later, it comes up because this means he can be that kind of conduit transferring plot information between the two universes. And I was like, that's pretty cool, right? That you made this kind of just nod to the character, right? Actually pretty integral into the plot of an episode that is otherwise kind of fucking out there, if we're being
Yeah,
honest.
no, and I will say the thing that I like why he did this didn't make sense. Like, Lord of Chaos, I guess, it was zany, right? Like, you can get away with a lot of that, right? He's like one of those villains where, he doesn't really need an explanation for doing something stupid because it's like in his nature or whatever. But it did feel kind of contrived. It's like if you thought about it for too long, it's like we're gonna split the universe into
No. So there is something that happens in this episode
right. But
that
like
is related to the meta plot where they're using the confusion to steal something. I don't even remember the details of it or whatever, right? So theoretically, that's the reason why they're doing this, is to create enough chaos that we can steal another piece of this chip tech or
sure,
whatever.
but like it also feels kind of like what, right? Like like
Yeah. Hmm.
it's
Yeah, it
very
also
strange.
feels a little weird that we've beaten Clarion before, and uh, that like his power, like that you would think. So the first time, I guess, you needed Doctor Fate to beat Clarion. Fair enough, right? But it just kind of felt like the Zatanna did not need to put on the Helm of Fate in
Yeah.
order to get there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like looking this gift horse in the mouth because I think that that's such a great moment and everything like that. But
No, I think I agree with you. I feel like that payoff, like the payoff, is good in the way that it happens, but it feels like the circumstances are a little bit forced, right? It
yeah,
doesn't.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm describing for sure.
Um,
Um, so but anyway, man, I love that moment so much. I like literally teared up when it happened again, and I knew it was coming. That's like the crazy thing, right?
yeah, no, I agree. Like, I mean, think it was kind of obvious, like that like as soon as she puts the helmet, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be her dad. Especially because like I was looking at this, like I know who's like as much as show, I'm like I know who Zatanna is, but who the fuck is Satara? Like, oh, it's her dad. And it's like, oh,
Yeah,
okay,
so one of the interesting things about the construction of like the universe here, so Zatanna in real DC universe continuity is the daughter of Zatara, and Zatara is like a famous superhero, but like she is the main character, and Zatara is almost always outside of the text, right? Like the whole thing is that he has sacrificed himself to save the world from whatever, and she's kind of like learning to pick up in his footsteps, right? Like that's kind of like the core of her character. And so it is extremely cool that she is used in this show this way, right? And especially because you get, even though she's not a member of the team until way later, right? And Zatara and her are kind of like off screen, like the little interactions you do get between them, I think, are interesting and kind of dynamic, right? Like there's the episode with Secret where Zatanna is clearly kind of chafing over her dad, who's like very overprotective, right? And I think all of that kind of stuff is what builds to the moment that he becomes Dr. Fate being so good. You know what I mean? Like, even though this is a C character in the show, not one of the main cast, who's just kind of had a guest star appearance in a couple of odd episodes, right? That stuff really builds into this just like huge emotional moment um, later in the season.
I also do like that in the like when they're doing like the like the Justice League admission episode, they're like, so Doctor Fate basically kidnapped Zatara. Are we cool with this?
Yeah. I mean, I've always loved that part of it. Um, the 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 Justice League sitting down at like the table and discussing who gets to be a member of the Justice League is like the coolest shit. There are always comic book issues that are like this, where it's like, and like the Avengers will also do that, but like those issues of just, or those episodes of like deciding who is on the team are really just fun, because it's kind of like I don't know, it kind of feels like I'm like discussing like could Goku beat Superman kind of questions,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But in universe, if that makes sense. Because you're like, oh, we need a heavy hitter. We need a tank. So let's bring this person to the team. Oh, you know, the Atom is a science guy. We need a science guy on the team or whatever, like whatever kinds of decisions you want to make. And obviously like that was integral to the plot because it was the key by which Red Arrow makes the jump into the Justice League and kind of gets you to the point where, it's the climax. But those episodes are just cool. They're just fun. That's like designing super teams is like a commonly super cool thing about superhero comics, right?
Yeah.
Arguing about who is cool, who should be on the team. Oh, if you could put anybody on the Justice League, who would it be? I would put Plastic Man because he's my favorite or whatever, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, yes, yes,
Are you
absolutely.
depressed that Plastic Man didn't have any lines, that he didn't get to
A
do
little
cool
bit.
stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's because he if he shows up, he needs to show up. Like if he shows up
Yeah.
with lines, he needs to show up as like his kooky self. Um, who is the hero that's like silver with like a red star in the middle of his chest?
Captain Atom.
Okay,
Um
which is different
the
from
Cap
the Atom, who's the small one.
Yeah, so the Atom shrinks.
Okay,
Captain Atom is he's like a military guy. I can't remember his name. He's very frequently used pitted as a very right-wing figure to fight Superman. The thing with Captain Atom is that he's like an Air Force pilot or something like that, and he like pilots this experimental aircraft and it blows up and it gives him the power to like absorb and control radiation. But he goes toe to toe with Superman because he can emit red sun, like the radiation of a red sun, which depowers Superman. Not like not like kryptonite, like it doesn't
right,
hurt him, but it does sap him of his strength or whatever. So like for instance in Justice League Unlimited, where Lex Luthor becomes president and Superman is like pissed about this or whatever and finds Cadmus, which gets used in this, and Cadmus is doing secret bad underground government things. Superman breaks into Cadmus and Lex Luthor sends Captain Atom to go get him. And he's like, this guy, Superman is trespassing, he's breaking all this whatever, right? And so the big superhero fight is between Superman and Captain Atom. He doesn't get used to do all that much here, but that's who he is, and that's kind of his like typical part in the show.
interesting.
They
Um,
also don't do much with like the Green Lanterns or anything like that, or like the Hawks. But
so I wanted to
it's
ask
nice
you,
that they're there.
what is the like? There's this very clearly supposed to be like an inside DC joke where they're like, "There's a third Green Lantern on Earth." Like, what about? And they're like, "No," together like twice in a row. And it's like
Do
Guy
you know?
Gardner.
Do you know about the Punch?
No.
Uh, okay, so there's a very famous comic of Justice League, which was written by.
Oh, is this a spousal abuse one?
No.
Okay.
That's the Marvel. That's Giant Man.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, the Punch refers to a specific issue of Justice League International, which was run by Kevin DeMatteis and Keith Giffen. Are like they're like a pair. Keith Giffen is a fucking legend, by the way. Um, this run is very good, and it has a very strange team, right? It's not any of the normal characters. It's got like Fire and Ice, who are not featured here. I think Captain Atom is actually on that team. Guy Gardner's on that team, and Batman is also on that team. I think he leads the team at the time, right? And it's funny because like it's known for being almost kind of like a sitcom in a way. Like it's very comedic and funny, and just more about like here are a couple of superheroes and we're doing our whatever. Martian Manhunter might be on the team. So Guy Gardner is a very bold and loud and like brash character, right? Like, he doesn't take shit from nobody, and he's angry and he'll tell everybody off, and he tells Batman to like eat a dick and everything like that. And there's one issue of the Justice League International comic where Batman has enough with Guy Gardner's bullshit and is like, if it wasn't for that ring, you know, I would whatever. And then Guy Gardner says, "Oh, what?" And he takes the ring off and he like puts his dukes up, and Batman punches him once in the face, and Guy Gardner immediately gets knocked out and goes to the ground. And it's just a tiny bit in this issue, right? Like completely unrelated to any of the stuff. It's not even like a momentous bit. It's just a bit, right? And it just became hugely famous. Which is why it's called the punch, right? Like it is a it is a really well known thing, right? Batman punches Guy Gardner in the face and knocks him out, with one punch in this thing. And so I think it's a reference to that, where it's just like, Guy Gardner is a loud, arrogant, braggart kind of character. He's there, but he chafes with the Justice League. He's not in a lot of iterations of the Justice League or whatever. And I just feel like it's a nod to that stuff.
Okay.
He's very. I actually like Guy Gardner quite a lot. He has a really good. He has a really good relationship with Kyle Rayner, who's the fourth Green Lantern. So there's Hal Jordan, like kind of classic. John Stewart, who, he's John Stewart. Guy Gardner, who is this other guy, and then Kyle Rayner shows up in the '90s. And Kyle Rayner is an artist, and for the while he's the last of the Green Lanterns. And Kyle is very like sensitive and like empathic and like emotional, which makes him just like a fun kind of comedy pair with Guy Gardner, because Guy Gardner's like, you know, he just, I don't know. That
Which
just makes them a fun group to interact with, right? Like Kyle gets really depressed about stuff, and Guy Gardner's like, cheer up, Bucko. Let's go beat up some space aliens or whatever.
which one is like can't control wood, and which one is can't control yellow? I know that these eventually
All
get.
four of these are can't control yellow. That's gone by this point in, like, comics continuity. Can't control wood is the original Green Lantern, which is in the Justice Society, which is completely unrelated to the Green Lantern Corps, all that stuff. That guy, a meteor falls to planet Earth called the Star Heart, and the dude carves a ring and a lantern out of it because it's like emitting this whatever. And you later learn that the Star Heart is like it's like a really powerful mystical artifact. Like it's magic. It's not space. It's not science shit, right? And so he can't do wood because of the mystical
Okay.
side of things, which is
What's his real name?
Alan something.
Okay. But like,
It's gonna
is
bother
he
me if
just
I
like
don't
not in the continuity? Like how do they rectify like the fact that like he's Green Lantern and like
Alan Scott is his name.
okay,
I don't know where he fits inside of this continuity. In the comics continuity, he fits alongside of. So basically, okay. So in like previous DC lore, right? There were two universes. There's Earth 1,
right?
which is like where Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman are. Okay, actually, I'm doing a bad job of explaining this. Okay, let's do this chronologically in real world times. What happens is in the 1940s, Superman comes out. Wonder Woman and Batman follow very quickly, right? All three of those are super popular. Then the Flash, the Atom, Green Lantern, Aquaman, all of these comic books all come out in the 1940s. Over the course of the 40s, superheroes become less and less popular into the 1950s, where they're basically not that popular at all, right? So most of these characters fall away except for Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, right?
This is the Silver Age, right?
Yeah,
Or-
so these is the golden age.
okay,
In the 40s is like the golden age, right?
okay.
Then in the late 50s, early 60s, some of these comic book writers say, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we essentially rebooted Green Lantern, right? And he doesn't carve a lantern out of a meteor, but he's a space cop, right?
Okay.
A ship crashes and an alien says you've been inducted into the Green Lantern Corps, right? Wouldn't it be cool if instead of I actually don't remember how the original Flash got his powers, but the new Flash, he gets struck by lightning, and then it's the Flash. So they created a new version of Flash, Aquaman, Green Lantern, Hawkman, Hawkwoman, a ton of these, right? The Atom, the original Atom is a wrestler, but he's 5 foot tall, so he's just small, and that's why they call him the Atom. And he eventually gets like radiation powers or something like that. Like I don't know. He eventually gets some powers. The new Atom obviously is the guy that can shrink. This is Ray Palmer. So what happens in the 80s, or what happens in like the 60s and 70s, is they go, okay, well now we have people who remember Alan Scott Green Lantern and also know know Hal Jordan Green Lantern, right? And they go, okay, we want to do an issue of the Justice League where Hal Jordan meets Alan Scott, basically, right? So Batman, his mythology is the exact same. Superman's mythology is the exact same because those comics have been running the entire time, no
Right.
break, right? It's still Clark Kent, Bruce Wayne. There's no alternate version. And they do this thing, and this is where the multiverse comes from, where the Justice League goes to an alternate universe where there's the Justice Society, and the Justice Society is Alan Scott. It's Jay Garrick is the original version of the Flash. It's like, the two different atoms, that kind of stuff, right? There's also the difference between why there is Hawkman, the space cop, the Thanagarian Hawkman, and there's Hawkman, the ancient Egypt Hawkman, because the first version of Hawkman is ancient Egypt, the second version is space cop. Um, so these are in two different universes. It's called Earth 1 and Earth 2. Earth 1 has Batman and Superman. Earth 2 has, the Golden Age Green Lantern, the Golden Age Flash, those guys. Then in 1986, you have Crisis on Infinite Earths, which condenses the entire DC multiverse, which includes way more places, right? Because what it used to be is it would be like Crisis on Earth 2, and it's a big event comic where the Justice League goes to Earth 2 and hangs out with the Justice Society. And then there's Crisis on Earth 3, where they go to Earth 3, and Earth 3 is where the Justice League is the crime syndicate, and it's all of the evil Superman, evil Batman, right? All that stuff, right? They condense all of these into one reality in Crisis on Infinite Earths, where they basically say, okay, in the 1940s, there's Alan Scott, there's Jay Garrick, they fight in World War II for President Roosevelt, but Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman are not around. Then Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman show up, and the new version of Green Lantern and Flash and whoever show up, and they are all in the same continuity, right? But they are not related to one another, right? Alan Shore, or not Alan Shore, Alan Scott is called Green Lantern, but he's not related to Space Cops, even though they both exist in the same continuity at this point. So they have mentioned the Justice. They've mentioned the Justice Society in Young Justice. So, for instance, in the Red Tornado episode, Red Tornado is another good example of this. Red Tornado is just a woman with tornado powers, and then gets rebooted as a robot. So in that episode they mentioned the original Justice Society. Doesn't include Superman, doesn't include Batman or anything like that. We don't really know who's in that. I'm sure I could actually take a look and probably identify. Like, I bet this is one of those Easter egg things where I could probably just look and see the costumes and go, oh, that's Wildcat, that's Sandman, that's whoever. But most of the time they are like they're like the old guys compared to the Justice League. Or like the Teen Titans. In a lot of the times in comic book continuity, like in modern comic book stuff, the Justice Society is like kind of like a family affair where they it's all about like these long legacies and finding like the kids of old superheroes and integrating them. The Justice League is kind of like a strike force. It's more tactical, kind of like what we see in Young Justice. And then the Teen Titans is like teen drama.
You know what they say, buddy? There's nothing stronger than family.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so I don't know. That's like
Yeah,
DC
sorry for leading you on
lore.
a Mango asks about comic book lore.
I'm happy to explain it. It's good shit, right? Like,
yeah, no, I mean, I think this is part of like what makes, to bring it back, what Young Justice like taps into, right? Like, because there's a lot of like like, oh, that's the thing I recognize. It's a thing. This is clearly an Easter egg. This is an Easter egg. There's like so much random stuff, like the new gods, right? Like
yeah. And I love the interaction. This is kind of why I say it is like the platonic ideal of the DC universe. It is so much about legacy, right? Like, one of the things that makes DC unique compared to Marvel is that Marvel doesn't really have sidekicks, right? Like, you think about Spider-Man, Iron Man, Thor. There are others heroes in their orbit in the same way that, like, you might say Batman has other heroes in his orbit, but Batman has other heroes in his orbit in a familial relationship, right? Nightwing is his eldest son, right? And then Robin is the younger brother to Nightwing, and then Batgirl is their sister, right? And then and we could go on and create a whole family tree out of all of the different people, the Bat people, right? Eventually Batgirl gets shot in Killing Joke, and she becomes Oracle, and then there's a new Batgirl, and it's just like on and on and on. But that stuff is always there's like a real lineage to it, which
I mean, this
which
shows up in this show too, right? Like the Flashes like have like a family gathering of like the different Of the like, there's
Yeah,
like
that's actually true. Because you're there for gay Jay Garrick. So Jay Garrick, who they mention, is the Golden Age Flash, and he says he's too slow now in his old age. Right? That's the Golden Age Flash. Then there's Barry Allen, who's the Justice League Flash, and then there's Wally West, who's obviously Kid Flash. Right? And that generationalness is something that I think is like intrinsic to what makes the DC universe like work and be cool. Um, and I just don't think anything else ever focuses on that. Like, obviously, the movies don't do any of this at all. I mean, we haven't had a Batman movie with a real Robin basically ever. I have a soft spot for those Joel Schumacher movies, but I don't think that they really count, to be honest.
mm,
Um, and uh, and so it's nice to see, like, oh yeah, here's Batman and here's Dick Grayson, right?
yeah,
And you get references to Barbara Gordon, right? You obviously see Speedy grows up into Red Arrow, which he also does in the comics, right? And Green Arrow takes on a new sidekick, who in this instance is Artemis. In the comics, it's a couple of different people. There's a couple of different versions of this, right? And so just like all of that mixes together and is like a cool thing, I guess.
yeah. No, I mean, to your point, right? Like, these this is all kind of like sidekick version type stuff, right? Like, I guess Superboy doesn't technically count, but like even like Teen Titans, right? Is like most of them are their own thing,
Mm.
with the exception of Robin. Um,
And even then, they can't say Batman's name. A lot of this is like rights stuff. Like Young Justice got very sweeping rights to use everybody without any, like without any issues at all. But in the Teen Titans show, they just couldn't say Batman, right? Because there
really,
was another Batman show at the time. Yeah, this was an artifact of how the rights of these shows got divvied up in kind of the way that like
the
the
Marvel
X-Men.
universe, yeah, X Men
Yeah,
and
yeah, like the
Fantastic Four,
Marvel
yeah,
universe, you can't say mutant or whatever, right? It's the same sort of thing, right? On Kids WB, if you have Batman Beyond, this is not a real thing, but if you have Batman Beyond, and then on Cartoon Network you have Teen Titans, right? The Batman Beyond people own the television rights to Batman and Bruce Wayne, right? So you just can't talk about Batman and Bruce Wayne on Teen Titans. Um, which is why they famously have to sort of allude to it when Deathstroke says to or Slade in that show says to Robin, you need a dad, and Robin goes, I already have a father, right? Like that's the closest you get, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Um so
yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. No, it's definitely a fun show. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of it. Um,
Are we doing more of it? I mean, we can talk about this off cast if we do. Are we doing that next week? What do you want to do
well,
next week?
next week is
Oh
Black
shit,
Widow,
Black Widow. Yeah. Fuck. God damn. Yeah, next week is Black Widow. Okay, fair enough.
which might be the Marvel movie that I'm least excited for because it's
I
like
have zero hype or interest. Like I could care less.
just because like it's set in like unless they like do like a post credits thing about like how she secretly survived. It's like what's the point, right? Like other than maybe to introduce her sister, who I guess become like who knows? I don't actually know
Yeah,
what happens in that movie, but like
I would not be surprised if this was a situation of her sister becomes the new Black Widow. Black Widow is an interesting version in the Marvel universe because a lot of the times in the Marvel universe you'll have characters who adopt sort of one another's
right, take on the
persona,
mantle.
right? Like
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we haven't even done like Falcon and Winter Soldier, right? But obviously, the whole question of Falcon and Winter Soldier is who's going to be the next Captain
in
America?
America.
Is it going to be
Yeah, yeah,
Bucky or is it going to be Sam Wilson, right? So like you can pass on the mantle of the hero from one to the other kind of thing. And I have a feeling that's what's going to happen in Black Widow. It's going to be whatever her sister
sister
is.
is yeah,
Um, you know, whatever.
yeah.
like I do not care that much at all.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right. But yeah, I mean we also have to do BNHA, which I think we did. Like I think when we did our cast, it was like towards the end of the third season or at the end of the third season of BNHA.
Okay,
I think we were gonna interleave that. We'll figure it out. We'll talk about the soft cast. Next week is definitely gonna be Black Widow.
for sure.
Because I've got tickets for it already.
God,
Movies.
I'm gonna have to get tickets for it.
Um,
It's gonna be nice going to the movies again. I haven't gone to the movies. They just opened up a couple of
nice.
weeks ago in LA. And really I should go see Fast and Furious 9.
Yeah.
I keep getting all these amazing family memes and I haven't actually.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean that's so. I guess jump into it. Besides, sending and receiving family memes, how's your week been?
I think the big news is 9.1, right? Obviously, the new WoW
Yeah,
patch dropped towards the.
actually, just to stop you, I feel like we should like end with 9.1 because it's probably gonna be like most of this conversation, right? Like we can
Okay,
probably
that's fair.
besides
Uh,
9.1, how's your week been?
Besides 9.1, I've been watching two other shows. One, so I talked about Pose. I got to the end of season 2 of Pose. I think season 3 is airing right now, but it was just everything that was on Netflix. I would highly recommend that show. It's very good, and I was very surprised at how good it was. I think part of this might be kind of unique to me because this is sort of a period in history that um, I've always been really interested in, but never had any kind of window to. So like Pose covers the late '80s, the early '90s, and then later the mid '90s in kind of the LGBT uh, section, right, of New York City or whatever. But one of the big storylines kind of underneath it is AIDS. Um, and how like the HIV epidemic like really hit the queer communities in places like New York City, which is something that I have wanted to know about kind of my whole life in a way. Like it's the perfect important thing that happened in history that we did not ever get taught in school because it was too recent. You know what I mean? Like, school kind of ended at Watergate or Reagan for us. We never actually got to do, more like modern stuff just because it was like too recent. So I feel like I just don't have a good understanding of like the AIDS epidemic, and I've always wanted to know more about it and poses like a good dramatization of sort of those communities at that time and how they were dealing with it and interacting with it. So
So
I finished Pose, which oh,
I was
go
gonna
for it.
say in choir in middle school, I sang 525,600 minutes, which like without like any of the context, they're just like, oh, what is this rent thing? It's like and like
My dad really hates rent. Well, this is actually part of it. So I don't know. I don't know if I should really talk about this on cast. Nah, it's fine. So my
I
dad's best
so
friend.
wait, hold on. The last time you weren't sure about this, I had to cut it, and I can't cut it when it's live. So make very
Okay,
sure.
that's fair. No, I mean this is just like personal family history stuff.
Okay.
My dad's best friend was a gay guy. His name was Tom, and he died of AIDS. And I remember I have always hated Rent, and I think the kernel of that hatred came from him. He really doesn't like Rent, because he thinks Rent is, you know, I don't know, like fake or false about like the AIDS epidemic, obviously. So singing 525,600 minutes is
Yeah, no, I mean it's interesting because I do remember learning about AIDS. None of like the salacious parts, right? None of like the policy parts or like the fact that it was originally called grids. Um, uh, but it, or even kind of like the association, like along with that, the association with homosexuality. I do
yeah.
remember like learning about it in kind of like a very scientific thing, right? Like I remember learning about like not the details of how it happened, but the thought that it came from monkeys in Africa, right?
I remember learning that too. I think I learned more about it in a biology class where it was talked about as a
Yeah, you know what? That's probably what it
disease
was. Yeah,
completely divorced from the culture because I definitely remember learning about that AIDS was a thing, especially because the term a cure for AIDS was pretty common at
yeah,
the time. And like now we might say a cure for cancer, right? Like, oh, like science is trying to find a cure for cancer, right? At the time it was trying to find a cure for AIDS or whatever. I didn't even understand like any of the connection to like homosexuality or any of that stuff because it was pretty clinically taught to us just like as an example of an incredibly contagious virus or
yeah.
whatever.
I mean, this
Um,
is also like before a Burgefell, right? Like this is like, and this is before like this
yeah.
is what like Massachusetts legalizes gay marriage. I think in like 2004. I want to say I could be
Well,
wrong.
I guess I did learn about it in high school. I mean, I think I went to a very like LGBT friendly high school just because of where I grew up, where there were just like a lot of gay couples in our town. Like I had a lot of friends in high school who had two dads or two moms or whatever. Um,
No, I mean,
but I'm just thinking, I must have learned about this in middle school or something, because I definitely learned about AIDS clinically as a virus
yeah.
much earlier than I learned about it as a this is something that, absolutely ravaged the homosexual community in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, I mean, well, part of it was like, well, it was like I feel like that would be around when we were like start like it took us a while to realize, like as like a world to realize that it
Hmm.
wasn't just like a homosexual thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, uh, just kind of I guess by the nature of like how it spreads, it took something
What's the
to
basketball player's name? I was
Daryl.
that's the
Was it
moment, right?
Strawberry? Was it Daryl Strawberry?
Was
Uh,
it, or I'm thinking Magic Johnson. Is he the
okay,
one? I might be thinking incorrectly. I remember maybe I remember. I don't even want to say this because I feel like it's incorrect, but I remember uh like someone once told me that it was a high profile athlete who got AIDS and I'm actually correct. Okay, so since his retirement, Johnson's been an advocate for HIV/AIDS prevention, safe sex, as well as all this other stuff. His public announcement of his HIV positive status in 1991 helped dispel the stereotype still widely held at the time that HIV was a gay disease and that heterosexuals need not worry about it. Yeah, so okay, that is true. I'm glad that I said this thing.
yeah,
Yeah, because it took until like high profile straight guys were talking about how they had contracted AIDS, um, in order to kind of like shake people out of it. Even though like big actors at the time, Ronald Reagan, it was Rock Hudson that made Ronald Reagan take AIDS seriously because Rock Hudson and Ronald Reagan were friends.
yeah. And
And Rock
Rock
Hudson,
Hudson was like the famously kind of like open secret gay type deal.
yeah, like theoretically closeted, but everybody knew he was gay,
Yeah,
like Liberace or something like that, right? At the time.
yeah, yeah.
God, it's so different now, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, and this is something that happened in our, like, this is something that happened in our lifetime, right? I mean,
lifetimes.
and to give us a little credit, right? Like, it's the millennials that were kind of like the generation that carried forward the idea that like being a homosexual is acceptable, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, uh, yeah, I mean, like, it is amazing, right? Because like, I think this was like in the Descent in Abergefell, right? Like that, like this is a thing that like went from like very little approval to like overwhelming approval in like 10 years, which is like crazy,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like,
same-sex marriage. I remember it was a huge debate in New Jersey because New Jersey did not have same-sex marriage, but it did have civil
well,
unions.
well, the civil union
And it
was,
was
I
all
think,
about the
yeah, it was
well,
like while we
civil
were in
union is the
school.
word. It's the exact same thing as marriage, right? But
Yeah,
it doesn't use the word,
yeah,
like
yeah,
legally speaking or whatever. And that
yeah,
was
yeah,
this huge, point of argumentation at the time, where it's like, oh, I if two men want to live together and have that kind of relationship, that's fine. But marriage is between a man and a woman or whatever.
yeah. I
Like,
mean, well, hey, Bill Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act, right? Like that was
yeah,
like,
that's true, right?
and uh, like the classic example is Barack Obama, right? Who was like
Mm.
against it like in the beginning of his administration and like changed as it became more politically tenable, which is it just crazy things, right? Like
Yeah, I mean, it is weird for sure,
yeah,
right? And now you have right wing Caitlyn Jenner running as a Republican transgender uh candidate for like California governor or something like that, right? Like just imagine those words
yeah,
10, 20 years ago. It's like absolutely
yeah.
insane.
No, there are like several high profile and like not just crazy ones, like right, Republicans, right? Like I don't think
Yeah.
any of them are in office that I can think of, but like who am I thinking of? There's a handful of them. Like they're like writers or whatnot, or like pundit types, but it's
Mhm. But anyway,
yeah,
so I finished the first two seasons of Pose. It's great. It's highly recommended. I don't. It's not worthy of a cast or anything like that. But if you're just starving for something to watch, that's just a good old time. Absolutely a good show for it. The other thing that I did is I started watching Better Call Saul again because I just was on Netflix and I had not realized that I needed to watch 26 episodes of Young Justice, and I was just like farming dailies or something like that. And I was like, what? What should I watch? And I opened up Netflix, and the first thing I saw was Better Call Saul, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna watch this. And it was great. And I loved I just God, that show is so good. Just from, its first couple of minutes. The montage I think the best montage I've ever seen in film or television is in Mindhunter, which is set to Fly Like an Eagle, where it kind of tracks the two main characters who do this thing called road school, where they're FBI agents who go town to town and kind of coach police officers into how to investigate murder cases. It's an incredibly well edited sequence. I think the number two sequence, like the number two montage, is the Jimmy's a public defender montage in episode 2 or 3 of Better Call Saul, where he's just, he's talking to the one DA, petty with a prior. He's getting coffee from like the coffee thing. It's just like it's so many good little moments, and the filmmaking is just great. And it's like I've seen this show how many times at this point, but it always just like completely takes my breath away.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it's a great show, and I look for there's the
I very much look forward to the next season when
yeah.
we get to cast about it again. What have you been up to?
Yeah. So, besides about only two small things, and we're the one small thing is Guilty Gear. More Guilty Gear, always Guilty Gear forever. It
Nice.
is so much fun. Just like so somebody put, like, I think Jam, who's a famous caster, said something like, "There's something about the grappler brain, right? It's like just about like taking shit until you make the one perfect read, and like you just like throw someone for like a billion damage." Like, yeah, that's definitely it, right? Like, um, there's this. So Potemkin has this thing. It's called the Kara cancel, which is he's got a shoulder charge, and you can cancel that into another special move. And so at round start, if you and it's pretty tough to pull off, especially for me because I'm not great at this stuff. But like
Mm,
at round start, you can immediately grab someone, but like it requires them to like not do like they can't have done anything that'll beat it, which is like a lot of things, right?
okay.
And like um and every once in a while I'll go for it and I'll get it and it just feels so perfect. It's like, oh man, you were anticipating me, like, because like that's me, like, you know rotating options on round start is like a whole thing, right? It's like, what are you going to do in the round start? It's like, well, I know that you like to do this, so I'm going to go over it. And it's like, well, maybe I'll catch you blocking this round and I'll get the grab. And when I do, it's just like, oh yes, because it's like such a demoralizing way to start the round, because it is a hugely damaging move. If you get it, it's like you already got like 40% of their health down. So it's just,
Wow.
you know learning the Guilty Gear also has like a weird health scaling system. Like, you take less damage the lower health you are. It's makes for good drama,
Okay.
but like it also makes kind of like legibility tough, in terms of like
Yeah.
understanding exactly what's going to happen. Um, but it's super fun. I'm having a great time with it. I'm at level 8 and I've been there for a while, and it feels like this is about the right level for me, which is satisfying for me because it's like it goes up to level 10 and then there's like a heaven section, which is like the real killers. Um,
Hmm.
and I am been terrified that I'm gonna like fall out of 8 for a while, just because like it's like just maybe a little bit more tough than I want it to be, than 50-50, but like that's kind of where I want to be from like challenging myself type level.
Yeah.
Um
Sure.
and so there's a lot of matchup learning, a lot of like execution stuff, right? Like my execution's not great, and like every time I do an input and I don't get the thing out I want is tough, but it's fun. It's super fun. It's the first time I've like felt this grabbed by a fighting game in a long time. So
That's honestly that's great. I feel like we're constantly talking about fighting games on the show, and they kind of bounce off of you, right? Like, it's like, oh, I'm playing whatever, and it's three
yeah.
weeks, and then it's a new thing, right? Um,
So
but Guilty
hope
Gear Strive
yeah.
is in its prime.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to, like, I'll watch Evo. Maybe I'm thinking about whether or not I want to try and participate, but it's like, it's because it's remote this year again. So
Hmm.
and also Sony owns Evo now, so I don't know how that's all gonna
Yeah,
play out.
that's the weird part, right?
Yeah, yeah. But the other big thing I did was, last night I watched Bo Burnham's new special Inside, which
Ooh, I
is
have not watched it yet, but everybody keeps recommending it to me.
it is a lot of fun. I think some of the first half is a little bit not great, or at least to me, it feels a little um, dry, like, or it feels a little predictable, right?
Okay.
Like he does some kind of like standard kind of like New York City politics level, of like, I'm a white guy, ha, right? And it feels like there's not like much more of a joke there other than like um, like that kind of thing. And and there's some decent gags. There's also like some stuff that feels like it goes on a little bit too long. Like he does like a lot of it's about internet culture.
Okay.
Um, and there's a moment where he does a reaction video to a thing he just did, and it's funny for a little while, but then it goes on for too long. I won't spoil
Okay.
more of it, but it's
That's interesting. God, man, I really do need to watch.
you should.
I need to watch the
And
special.
some of the songs like are just like really good earworms. Like like for people at home who maybe don't have Netflix or like just want to like watch a little piece of it, go look at the video for Welcome to the Internet. It just crawled into my brain and like it won't come out. Like it is um there's a couple ones like this. So the best video I think is White Woman's Instagram, which is he like it's the song's fine or whatever. And the song's also another earworm, but like the video is him like recreating stereotypical like white woman Instagram like posts, and it's just so perfect, right? It's like him like like the balloons falling or like and it's all the whole thing is like just in front of this one wall, and him just like doing it up, like putting way too much effort into it, like like a white woman's Instagram. He does like he puts like lights around it and like does like a pose. It is phenomenally done. And after I watched it once, I was like watching it on my phone just before I went to bed because it was like stuck in my head. And like in the darkness, like it's boxed, so it's like that 4:3 ratio, like that Instagram is, right? So like you're watching it
Sure.
on your phone, and it's just like perfectly like oh, this is like an Instagram song in a post. There's an early sight gag that it's like in this kind of like one note kind of bit about like like being a white guy. He's like um it's like I think it's like Martin Luther King Jr. plus Weird Al equals Bo Burnham, which I thought was a decent gag, but like um it feels like he's kind of like in that Weird Al phase, like where he's like really kind of like got it down, and like the songs feel like real pop songs rather than kind of like his older stuff, his YouTube stuff is funny, but it's like clearly like um kind of like stand up in song form, if that makes sense. Whereas this feels like songs with comedy attached. And there's like
Okay.
I think there's some interesting stuff there. Like if you watch it and you want to talk about it one of these end of episode segments, I think we should.
Yeah, I'll
But
probably try and
yeah,
watch it next week, and
yeah,
we can maybe talk about it because I'm very interested by what I'm hearing and reading
yeah,
about it, and I want to know more. So yeah.
yeah. I don't think it's a full episode, but I do think it'd be a good after segment. So we'll do that. And now that we've got like 10ish minutes left, let's talk about 9.1 since that's the bulk of our weeks, I assume, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So 9.1 came out, Chains of Domination patch. The season itself has not started, right? So we're still in season 1. There's no new raid, no new dungeon, no new Mythic Plus stuff. But we got a bunch of new content. So there is the story gate into 9.1, which is the Battle of Ardenweald, and then the addition of Korthia and some more story questing related to like that and the Maw, right? Introducing a couple of new things, right? How have you been finding it? Is it good stuff? Is it bad stuff? Are you into it? Do you hate it?
Most most
Give
of
me
it
all the opinions.
most of it's good. I think like Korthia is fun. Like there's just it's like a thing to do that doesn't feel like it's I'm doing the same thing over and over again, which is
Yeah.
nice. Um,
I
uh,
also feel like it is valuable, which I haven't had a feeling of that in a long time. I've like, I've been farming. I had been farming the maw for a long time, but at a certain point, I had gems on everything, and I had sockets on everything, or I had sockets on everything. I had all my conduits upgraded or whatever, and I wanted to do stuff, but there was nothing that had worthwhile rewards, right? Like at that point, I'm just maxed out on things, and so it was like, I want to play WoW, but there's nothing to do or whatever.
right.
So it's nice that in Korthia it's now like, okay, this stuff has a purpose, right?
Yeah. Plus, there's like a lot more item levels to jump to stick around with, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm have like there's also like little things, right? Like there's like the horse mount or whatever, or the unicorn mount that
Hmm.
like you have to run around and find. Like that's all It's all been definitely novel and super fun. Very specifically to monks, they broke Death Touch in a weird way.
Really?
It's not broken, like it still works the way it's supposed to, but for some reason, like you can do it early on, like I think it's just mobs in Korthia, and like it'll do like the like 35% of their health thing, or no, not 35% of your health thing that happens on
Okay.
bosses, but you can do it at a point before they're at 15% of their health. And apparently it also broke the scaling, like the scaling on your max health. Like if in I was reading on the forums that in um what's the name of it? Torghast, that the Touch of Death build doesn't work anymore. Like it's only under your base health. Um and it's been that
Huh.
way for a week. And it's not the end of the world, right? Like um I haven't done Torghast. I'm probably gonna try that tonight after we finish here, just to
Oh, I
because
really love the new tour guest. I had a blast. Everything I always talked about being great in Visions. I mean, I liked old tour guest fine, and it was like a great way to just like kill an hour or whatever. But like new tour guest, man, it's my shit.
um but
But yeah, so
yeah.
so that's really interesting. Like breaking Touch of Death breaking that hard.
Yeah, and again, it's not broke. It like works the way it's supposed to in the situations that it can be in, but like it's like just got some weird behavior other places, and um other so one of the changes that I thought was like really cool. They also broke the fucking arena skirmish quest. 'Cause,
Really?
yeah, the honor doesn't accumulate properly. Like I got like 10 honor, and like that's it. I mean, so you accumulate honor properly for yourself, but not for the purposes of getting the quest done. For whatever reason. I don't know if they fixed that, but like I tried it a couple days ago. It's like I'm not getting honor for this. Screw it. But they did add a
Interesting.
quest to get an open world kill in war mode, which is fun. It's a lot of fun.
I remember those quests in BFA. I did a couple of those to get. It was a fun thing to do early in the expansion to get gear. Well, specifically when you were Alliance side, because the quest was always Alliance side. But I don't know.
But what do you mean it was?
I might be thinking of something different at that point. There's an Alliance side quest that. So okay, so the way it works in war mode is when there's a faction imbalance in war mode, if one faction is more in war mode than the other faction gets a quest to get an item, right? Like a
Okay.
powerful item that is kill somebody in war mode, which is to incentivize if it's always Alliance. There's way more Horde that are in war mode. It just says, hey, if you're Alliance, go into war mode, hang out in war mode for a bit, kill somebody, which is part of why the mob was such a bloodbath at the beginning of Shadowlands, because all of the Alliance had that quest and they needed the gear. It's good gear, right? Oh my god, this siren, I'm sorry. It's good gear, right? So they would camp the entrance to Venaris and just slaughter people.
Hey, it's. I mean,
But so this must be something different then. Is this like call to arms?
this is like when you enter Oribos and you turn right where the PvP vendors are. It always has
Okay.
like two weekly quests. One which is like one rated, one public, and now there's a third one which is like a war mode quest. So
Okay, yeah.
uh,
So those also existed. They didn't reward items, but I
yeah,
remember
this
those.
just rewards 250 anima and some honor and conquest.
Okay, yeah, okay. Those also existed. They were different. They were the call to arms quest. I thought you were talking about against overwhelming odds. I
No,
I don't really do much stuff in war mode because I'm lazy. And so
10% more, man. Uh,
I honestly I should. The thing my thing about war mode, I hate it. I never start fights with people because that's not fun. And I hate it when I'm just trying to do my thing and somebody starts a fight with me. And I like World PvP because I love when somebody starts shit with me and I kill them. Like, there's just nothing more fun than somebody starts fighting you and you're just like, okay, motherfucker, and you like smack them down, right? But I just get very frustrated if I'm just like sitting here trying to do like a world quest or whatever. And so it's like mosquitoes buzzing around my get the fuck out of here. I'm trying to focus on my world quest.
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, so
No, I mean I have fun
that's
with it.
fair.
So
Did you do the maw assaults? The maw assaults are the that's the shining thing in 8.1 that I've had the most fun with.
most else were fun. So one of the fun things, one of the silly things that I think is fun is like there's like people hanging out, like people haven't been hanging out at the mouth of the maw for a while, but they did with this
Mm.
patch. But if you get on like the thing that delivers you to the assault, you become immune. So it's just like chi torpedo out of the mouth, like beelining it for the fucking delivery mount and jumping on so you can like run all the ride all the way to the assault area.
Yeah.
But um
Yeah, I loved the thing I loved about the Maw assaults is that it just has all these references to stuff that like like I obviously I did the Legion assaults and the BFA assaults or whatever, and those were both kind of leveling content, which like didn't feel worth it for me at max level. It's kind of like why would I ever on Baron,
right.
like an assault. I don't need to experience the items are bad, all this other sort of stuff, right? Um but the Maw assaults are quite competitive, right? They're one of the most efficient things you can do in terms of like world content getting stuff, right? Like they're putting out like basically top level world quest gear, which granted is way below what I'm getting, but they give you Korthite crystals, right? Like those legendary crystals, etc. And the and they're very story related, right? One of the cool things, like there's Tubbins and Gubbins who are Theotar's little guys,
Assistance,
whatever those.
yeah.
Yeah, the dredgers, right? He has his two little dredgers. The quest is you go and you give Theotar's tea to everybody as Tubbins and Gubbins. There's another one where you fly as a stone fiend. This is actually a stone fiend that which are like the little imp guys, right? You actually you do a quest. His name is Timmel, and I noticed it because I have the quest in my inventory or like in my quest log on somebody who I was doing this on, and it was like, oh right, I remember it. There was a quest where there was a stone fiend that had been ripped apart, and the quest was go get his head, his body, and his wings or whatever, and bring them to the guy, and he's gonna stick them back together, and Temmel's gonna be fine. And just like stuff like that, right? Like Theornax, the gay horse dad, which we call them, in the Ardenweald questing is the he's like one of the night warriors or whatever, but like he's there and he's like, hey, go get these druid spirits or whatever, which I just like. It's neat seeing those guys in the world and they're doing stuff and hanging out with them. I really loved the like that there is the main covenant who's doing most of the stuff, and then it's sort of like the side covenant who's like just helping out or whatever. Like that's just, I don't know, that's just good shit. And it's
Yeah, I
probably my
agree.
favorite version of these Maw or these like assault sort of weekly assaults that they've ever put into the game.
Yeah, I mean they're every 3 days too, so you can do them a little bit faster.
Yeah.
I do think like the part of that which is like uh like the weekly, like the renown part of
Mm,
it did feel like it took a lot to get that fill up, which isn't the end of the world, but it
yeah.
also feels like if I'm in holding pattern, I don't know how much I want to like do that for, but um
Yeah, I feel like it might be easy because you get a lot of you get, so you get some from the dailies or whatever, but you get a lot of progression by doing the Maw assaults.
yeah.
I wonder if just like how much you get just by doing the two Maw
Yeah,
assaults
that's
each
true.
week.
Yeah, it's probably
I
like
like it better than the Souls quest. Like the Souls quest is fine, but like it was pretty uninteresting. You
yeah.
just go to the Maw, s- run a circle around Zoval's cauldron and crack all these rocks or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And it ended up being kind of a grind a little bit when you got to 20 souls. Like that took a while, right? So I kind of appreciate that this is something that just sort of measures like, hey, if you're just doing dailies, if you're running around and getting treasure chests and farming rares when they're up, um, this is going to contribute towards, your renown. I think it's going to be a big pain point next week though, because it's going to gate people's flying.
Hmm.
You're gonna, because I think we're at renown 42 right now. So
Yeah.
renown 43 is not flying. Renown 44 is flying. So I think it's gonna be very easy to do the anima renown quest, and then you're gonna have to do the other one in order to get flying, and people are gonna be really like fiending for it. And I guess they're just gonna grind chests, right? Like I think that's the only thing you can do inside of a single day to contribute towards that progress bar.
Yeah.
Unless maybe the raid does it, which I don't think it does, but who knows?
We'll figure it out.
What do you think of the Battle of Ardenweald, the cinematic? Do you have any big opinions on
Uh
Sylvanas and Tyrande?
just that like everybody seems to job like everybody jobs in every cinematic ever, right? Like no one like the fights are always like a short, which is I get it. It's a game cinematic, but it's like Rhonda like they build up this like Moon Huntress thing, and she's like, "It's time, Alune," and then she like does like one thing, and like, "Oh no, my powers are gone." Well, I guess we're done. you know.
Yeah, I think there's a tension in WoW storytelling where you are sometimes in the theater watching a movie, essentially, right? And you are sometimes in your chair playing a game, if
Right.
that makes sense. And I think that's a little bit of the tension kind of like rubbing there. Cause like, you know, so like if I were to take the inverse argument, or not really argument, but like the inverse case, let's say Tyrande killed Sylvanas here. Well, that's kind of anticlimactic, right? Like
Right.
she just gets killed in a cinematic by somebody who just shows up randomly. And like that's a cool cinematic and everything like that. But I think I would have been disappointed, right? I want to deal with Sylvanas. I want Sylvanas to be a raid boss that I fight in the way that I've kind of been trained to fight the Lich King or Illidan or Gul'dan or whoever, whatever WoW villain Garrosh, right? That gets set up over the course of the game. But I do think that also sort of robs these cinematics of their narrative tension because you can never have, you know, you can have drama happen, and I like the drama, and I think Tyranda's arc is really interesting, and I'm invested in it, and all this other stuff. But you can never have it like resolve, if that makes sense, because the resolution has to happen for me in a gaming chair, not me in a movie theater seat, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah, and
which I don't know. I don't know that it's a good way to deal with that.
so that's part of it, but I also think part of it for me, the big thing, it's like it happens in 30 seconds, right? Like like
Oh, sure, sure, sure.
right, like if it was like a bigger fight, I'd feel like was less bad than the beginning of the expansion, but like the way I've really felt it is like um like Bolivar like fights Sylvanas for like all of like there's all of like an exchange, and then like she like just drops him, right? Like then he just like falls over. It's like, well, he was protecting us from like the somebody just taking it, and like Sylvanas just kind of like walks in like shits all over him, right? Like um I would have I just would like a little bit more there. Also, I think part of it too is like you know, it's been so long since 9.0 that like the memory of like kind of the flow of the expansion, it feels kind of short, right? It's
Yeah.
just it feels like, although maybe it would have been worse thing because it's like you're building to this like Night Hunter moment, and then she just, like I said, she just kind of jobs, like she does like one
Yeah, I
thing.
think part of it I like the Night Warrior stuff, but I feel like I think the story of the Night Warrior is inherently frustrating because it's kind of a metaphor for the dissatisfaction of
Revenge.
vengeance.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, this is kind of an undercurrent in all of Shadowlands, right? With like the Uther stuff or whatever. But it's like revenge is not justice, right? And it will not satisfy you. And I think it is intentional that Tyrande has these hollow victories because at the end of the day, I mean, in absolute terms, she's had plenty of victories, right? She retook Darkshore. She saved all the souls from, all of the souls that died in Teldrassil from Torghast, right? All of this other stuff. But like killing Sylvanas in the same way that was kind of an empty, like when the Lich King died, Sylvanas was not satisfied and was not like made whole by his death because she was so consumed with vengeance. I think it's a similar kind of like parallel that
Right.
Tyrande is kind of going through. And so, and I see people memeing about how like, the Winter Queen at the beginning of the Battle of Ardenweald is like, "Oh, I'm gonna go make sure, my sigil is safe while you fight these people." And then at the end of the Battle of Ardenweald, she's like, "Oh, what sigil? The one that just got stolen by Anduin just behind me?" You know what I mean? But I think part of that is like I think part of that is sort of the intention of Tyrande's character arc, right? Even if Tyrande kills Sylvanas, the sigil is gone. It's a hollow
Yeah.
victory. Anduin took it. Whatever the jailer's fucking doing, he's gonna continue doing it. It does not matter. It will not satisfy you. Which I think is why Alune takes the power
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Tyrande, right? Is she doesn't want Tyrande to commit suicide, basically, to get this. So I guess we'll see what happens at the end of the raid. I feel like tomorrow on Twitter is gonna be unbearable. World of Warcraft Twitter is super bad at ever dealing with Sylvanas ever. Just because
See,
like you have Sylvanas stance on one side and Sylvanas like super haters on the other, and it's just like it's gonna be a bloodbath.
What you should do is hang out in my corner of Twitter, where everybody plays Final Fantasy 14 and then shits on WoW in ways that don't make sense because they haven't played the game in 5 years.
I mean, I get that, right?
Oh man.
Oh God.
Are you familiar with the 14 memes at all? Like the biggest 14 meme is like, have you considered Final Fantasy 14, which includes Heaven's Ward, like award-winning Heaven's Ward and free play up to level 60 or whatever, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I know that Asmongold started playing Final Fantasy 14 on his stream, which was its own thing, and some random whoever on the WoW team on Twitter, on his personal Twitter account, said that Asmongold is an asshole, which frankly I think is true.
I mean, that's probably true, yeah.
But became a giant clusterfuck of like, everyone is just like, Blizzard fucking hates its players or whatever. Which, to be honest with you, I think this is bananas. Name another game where the top streamer of your game is there's just so much contempt between the devs and that, that streamer. I just think it doesn't exist. It just like is a complete anomaly. The players of World of Warcraft just fucking hate the game so much, and they hate the devs so much that it boggles my mind.
I think a lot of it is kind of like the you don't complain if you're happy type syndrome, right? But like,
I also think part of it, I think one of the most cogent things about WoW is actually like 10 different games in one, right? And I think there are a lot of things that if you play WoW as a mount collector, right, there are things that frustrate you about WoW, the small scale PvP game, right? And you look at arenas that you need to do in order to get the Vicious War Spider as this terrible thing, right? Or you look at whatever thing, like it's these places of friction where that stuff bumps into one another, that I think creates a lot of frustration for players. But yeah, I mean, what can I say? Ian bad, Blizz bad. It's Battlelands. Are you on the WoW Circle Jerk subreddit?
no.
It is golden. I love every minute of it. It's like just the most funny. It's just like, it's so good. It's the best Circle Jerk subreddit I have ever seen in my entire life. Just because, like, I don't know, people hating the game tend to be pretty stupid, and making fun of them is fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, not even circle jerking, right? Like, I went to the WoW subreddit to see if I could figure out what was happening with Touch of Death. I definitely saw one person be like, "I'm not doing grind Dorothea or whatever. It's all bullshit." Just
My favorite thing is the second day Korthia was out, there was somebody who said the top post of the subreddit was a casual's experience of 9.1, and it was just like 9.1 is awful. It is dog shit content that we should not tolerate. And it's just like none of it is out. The raid isn't out. Tassifex isn't out. You haven't done it. What? Like, but that's the world we live in, right?
yeah. All right, we've gone way over.
We have gone way over. Okay.
Yeah, so we should probably get out of this. So if you'd like to email us about whatever you think about 9.1 or what was the thing we talked about? Young Justice Season 1 or any of the other things we talked about on this podcast. You would also at ZeroSplayGames@gmail.com or podcast@ZeroSplayGames.com or subscribe to us on SoundCloud, iTunes, rate, review us, all the good stuff. YouTube, twitch.tv/ZeroSplayGames. That's everything I have. Buddy, you have anything you want to promote?
I have nothing else I am looking to promote.
Well, in that case, until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.